Alright, what's up guys? My name is Zach and today I am driving a 1987 BMW 535IS. Up front is a 3.4 liter inline 6 and down below is a 5-speed manual transmission. Now I am super excited to be driving this here 5 Series because I haven't done one quite like this before. I've done E30s from the 80s before, and those were 3 Series, but this is an E28, making it the 5 Series, and something I just don't have much experience with until today. But before we get on to anything else, I have a website, zackpraedel.com, where you can buy stickers and other merchandise when it becomes available. You can also submit your own vehicle to be reviewed by me through a quick and easy submission form, and you get a video of your car just like this one. And you could read my behind-the-scenes blog to see what I'm filming before it comes out on the channel. But let's get back to that 3.4 liter inline 6 under the hood. Well, it makes about 182 horsepower, and it's a single overhead cam inline 6 known as the M30. Now the M30 was put in a lot of different vehicles, and so put in this E28, it doesn't make a whole ton of horsepower, but it is a pretty smooth engine. It definitely offers a more elegant experience than the 4 cylinders that BMW was putting out in the time. Now those 4 cylinders aren't bad, but for a bigger car like this, you really want the 6-cylinder. That's exactly what I get. Like I said, paired to a 5-speed manual transmission. Now these cars were offered with 4 speeds, 5 speeds, and automatics, and I actually really like it. The clutch is nice and light, the shifter throw is nice and easy. What I've come to know and love from BMW of this era, 80s and 90s BMWs drive very similarly in my experience, and I really like that about them. Last but not least, of course, the E28 is rear-wheel drive. So that's stuff out of the way. Let's talk about the interior. We have some interesting, fun BMW quirks in here. Well, in front of me, I have a couple of gauges. On the left is my speedometer. In the center, I do get coolant temperature, fuel, and a couple of warning lights. But we'll talk about actual warning lights in a second. Then off to the right, I have my tachometer with my MPG gauge. This is very typical BMW of this era. They were putting MPG gauges on all of their vehicles, which I find fascinating. The steering wheel has since been changed out. This is a formal steering wheel, and this is actually similar to what they used in the E30 race cars. So the owner wanted to put this in from their old E30. And off to the left of the gauge cluster, I do have a climate control vent, my fog light switches, dome lights, and other light options. And on the door, I have my power mirrors, and then just my latch to get in and out. Moving into the center, up above the rear view mirror, first of all, we do have controls for the electric power sunroof, but then I also have a bunch of these lights. These are actually the warning lights. So when any of these things go wrong, they will light up here. But you might be thinking, Zach, I don't really look over there all that often. Well, that's okay. So if something goes wrong, it will say check on the gauge cluster, and then that will be your warning to then check these lights. And once you do, you hit the check button, and they'll go away if they're already checked, or if it's a persisting issue, it'll stay. Kind of interesting there. But moving into the center, we do have this giant vent. Now, this is adjustable. However, this is actually from a slightly older BMW 5 Series. BMW took away the ability to adjust it as the model years went on because people were misusing it. And so this is actually an older vent with the adjustments. But then I have 2 more climate control vents, and off to the left of that, I have a little information center. So I can look at the date, average miles per hour, average MPG, range, timer, temperature, code, set and reset, things like that. Really cool stuff, and you do see this in other BMWs like the E30 and E36. Then we do have the stock radio from BMW with the cassette player, little BMW badge there, as well as my fader off to the left. And then I have the climate controls, pretty simple stuff here, temperature off to the left, fan speed off to the right, where to send it in the middle, as well as my AC button. And the middle slider is actually electronic, but the top and bottom slider are actually cable driven. Found that kind of interesting. Then I have some vents here. This is actually where the air conditioning is. It's its own separate system. And then I have the ashtray and cigarette lighter. And then we move on to the shifter. Now the shift knob is actually from an E30 as well, but this is also where I will find my window switches left and right for the power windows. They are not on the doors. BMW did this for a very, very long time. They've since moved away from that, but interesting to see. Then I do get a handbrake, and then I have all of my seating adjustments. So super 80s, the way that they labeled them and made them these big chunky plastic buttons. But what's annoying is that they're easily hit. If I try to rest my arm, I'm gonna move my chair. My passenger next to me can freely adjust my seat as much as he or she might want to. And these cars could be optioned with heated seats, and those are those two dead switches way at the back. However, this car didn't get that, but even if it did, I'm sure your kids in the back seat would love turning on your heated seats on a hot day just to mess with you. Now, unfortunately, all of that interior goodness means that there is no cup holder. Because this is an 80s car, cup holders were not very prevalent. So, unfortunately, the 1987 BMW 535IS fails the big friggin' bottle test. Now we gotta talk about the seats. Now the seats are part of the reason why it is the IS. The S stood for sport, and so it got spoilers up at the front and back as well as these sport seats. They are very, very adjustable with the power settings, as we mentioned earlier, and they are pretty comfortable. Speaking of seats, however, we do have back seats, so let's go do a back seat review. All right, so we're in the back of the 1987 BMW 535IS, and a couple of things to note. First of all, this is my seating position, actually a little bit further back than my seating position. My knees are not hitting the seat in front of me. My head's not hitting the ceiling. It's very, very comfortable. It's going to be a lot more comfortable than the BMW E30, the 3 Series that came out at the same time. A lot more comfortable than that. The seats themselves are pretty cushy, which I like. I do get a big, chunky, girthy center console. I like that a lot. But other than that, no real crazy amenities besides I do get these ashtrays built into the doors. It's the 80s. What do you want? Let's hop around the very back. We'll take a quick look at the trunk and cargo space, and then we'll talk about the looks. All right, so we're on the back of the E28. Pop it right there, and there you go. Pretty standard trunk, giant, very, very large. Nothing too crazy. However, apparently this jack is terrible and is known for destroying cars. Not very good. And then down here, we do have the spare tire. But putting that back, the calling card of BMW trunks from the 80s is the toolkits, and this has a complete toolkit finished with this towel that is actually marked BMW, so everything is there, even the foam is there. Really, really cool. BMWs used to do this. They used to give you full toolkits branded BMW on them, and yet they don't do that anymore. It's just a simple screw. So here, if you want to see what a complete E28 toolkit looks like from this angle, from that angle, with the towel, without the towel, there you go. Very, very cool stuff out of the trunk here. And unfortunately, modern BMWs, they just have a roadside assistance phone number right here. Kind of sad, but that is the trunk of the 5 Series. Now we gotta talk about the looks, and how can you not simply fall in love with the exterior of this car? I love it so dang much. You're seeing it from every angle, and I'm loving it from every angle. I really, really mean that. It's one of my favorite looking eras of BMW, probably my favorite ever, and I just can't get over it. Driving this car makes me feel like Steve Harrington from Stranger Things. I know that was a 7 Series and a slightly older one, but I just love the sort of regal and classiness of this car. Big fan of that. However, we do have one more thing to talk about with the exterior, and that's the wheels. These are not the factory wheels that came on the 535IS back in 1987. The reason for that, cut to the spare tire, this is what would have came on it, the bottle caps, they're more commonly referred to as, but the tire code says VR. Those wheels are a middle size. They're bigger than 14s, but smaller than 15s. And so finding tires for them, I believe only Michelin is currently making tires for that size, and even so, they're in extremely rare quantities. If you want to run to your local discount tire or bippity-boppity tiresforthelow.com, they're probably not going to have a size for the stock wheels. So it's very, very common to have the wheels swapped out for something a little bit more modern and something that you can actually find tires for regularly. I think that's pretty interesting. But now let's get on to my final thoughts. What do I think finally driving a 5 Series from the 1980s? Well, something that I really love about these cars, the E30 and now the E28, is how simple and light they are. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that by curb weight they're a very light automobile, but when I get into one of these cars, it really feels like I'm wearing a costume rather than actually sitting in an automobile. I feel like everything in here is working in harmony, as opposed to modern BMWs or even just modern cars, where there's a screen that does this, and sometimes the screen might fail and you might have to reboot the screen, but then everything else is fine. I've had to reboot the window switches in my Mazda 3. Why? You don't have to reboot these window switches. Everything is just a wire to a wire, a button to a button, and an engine to my right foot. That's it. And so when I drive this car, I feel very comfortable with it. You know what this car drives like? If you've ever worked on a car and you only have hand tools, you don't have power tools, and you're undoing a really, really tight 12 millimeter bolt, but it's coming off and you feel every click of the wrench as you bring it back, and the bolt is coming off how it should, that's what it feels like to drive this 5 Series. It just works how it should, and I know exactly what I want to do, and I know how the car is going to react. I know that it's not going to twitch and try to murder me. And yet when I want the power, I have it. I have it at my disposal. That inline 6 will sing when I want it to sing, and it'll hush when I want it to hush. It's a very, very obedient car, and I like that. I like that a lot. Huge thank you to Autumn for letting me take out their E28. This thing is absolutely awesome. Autumn has been fantastic to work with. Very, very knowledgeable. This is their baby. I mean, how can it not be? This thing is an absolute singer, and I'm very, very fortunate that Autumn let me take it out. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to rate the video, comment on the video, and subscribe if you really liked it. Take care, guys.